Alright, since the engine's out of the machine shop, it's time for me to make some room so I can get working on the rest of the car. And also gotta get ready to get that engine back in here and get it rebuilt. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this time to clean up the garage. It's a mess. So I'm gonna do that really quick and then start making some room to work on the other stuff. Alright, so this is kind of the this is the area where I was working on the head, and you can see all of this is aluminum dust. What a mess. This is all just aluminum dust, and also the grindings from the sandpaper and the buffs that I was using. So here's one of the sandpaper cones. Just kind of, this is a worn out one, but that screws into this. It goes into a grinder, like a die grinder, like a 1/4 inch shaft, and it's got these little threads here that screw into this guy. So this slides onto here like so. As you can see, pretty worn out. One of the things that happens actually is that the tips break off. Here's one that's in my grinder right now, and if I can, which I probably can't, oh, there it goes. When the tip breaks off one of those, or if you break a tip off, it's nice because you can use the rest of that grinding cone to do your grinding. Alright, so quick overview of what we got here. I went ahead and pulled off the front crash absorber, the big plastic piece that was on here. I was kind of looking at some of the stuff, and I know this car has been in a small accident before, but I wasn't really sure of the extent of it. It looks like there's a lot of small spot welds and whatnot on here. I'm not too concerned. It looks like it was repaired okay. You can see there's a lot of kind of squishiness in there. From what I was told, it got backed into in a parking lot. I half believe that, but it has a new hood from Mazda, and it looks like it's got some work to this front bumper. So I'm not really sure how much of that is true, but it looks like there was some work done. Like, these guys don't line up. You can see that's sticking out a little bit. So I'm not 100% like convinced, but also it seems fairly straight, so I'm not too concerned. As long as everything kind of fits in here and I can make it work, then no big deal. I pulled off some stuff. There's some grounds that go here. I'm going to clean those up. I went ahead and hosed out the engine bay like you saw. Now that everything's dry, there's still a little dirt left. I got rid of most of the surface stuff, but there's still a little bit that we could pull off with some scrubbing, so I might go at that. But otherwise, this is looking fairly clean. Definitely some rust in places, but from what I can tell, not too shabby. So next up, I'm going to start working on the fuel system. I need to pull out the fuel lines, so that includes this hard line all the way to the back, so that runs along down to the transmission tunnel and all the way to the back of the car via these lines right here. So those are going to get pulled out because they're going to be replaced with some big braided stainless line. So yeah, I'm gonna get going on that, pull the pump out of the fuel tank, which is behind the parcel shelf, and we'll see how far we can get tonight. So following the flying me out instructions for the fuel pump install, is we need to pop the lid of the fuel tank access panel. It's the this is the access panel for the fuel pump, and that is on the package shelf or the parcel shelf in the rear. I was kind of hoping I could get to it with a top down, but as you can see, the top goes into the parcel shelf, so no such luck. The problem with that is it is a bit of a pain to get down into here because there's a glass down in here right now from the top, and if I put the top up, it moves, but now it's very tight quarters inside of there, so kind of frustrating. I guess I'll do it with the top up, and I'll see if I can find a camera angle to get in there. Alright, so I went ahead and slammed the seats forward all the way. I pushed them forward and tipped them, so I get a little room in the back here. And the big thing I did was pull out the wind blocker, which is the big kind of fold down thing that's on the NB. The NA has a bar that runs across the top here, but luckily here we don't have that, so one less thing to get in the way. Next thing I gotta do is pull off all these panel clips, and I got a little tool to do that. Alright, here's the tool. It's just a little handle with kind of a fork at the end here. What you can do is just slide that under there and just give it a little pry, and it should pop out. There we go. And it's, whoops, and it's these Christmas tree clips that are kind of, yeah, they'll be fine. You can put them back in. If not, you can always get new ones. So I'm going to do the rest of those. Got to do all those, and there's a bunch that run around the back side of this as well. I might be able to fold it up and out of the way though, so let's see where I can get with that. Alright, looks like I can just fold this up. There's kind of a rubber sheet and an insulating pad, and there is the fuel tank hatch. So let me see if I can curl this back a little bit, and I can probably get some access to this without having to tear all this carpeting out. Alright, that's about the most tucked I can get it in there. I know it's kind of hard to see because of the sun, but it's kind of tucked up in there. So now I just got to pull out all these screws and yank this panel out. Let me do that. Alright, screws are out, and this panel should just kind of come off. Perfect. And oh, look down there. There she is. There's the fuel pump. Now, it's kind of crazy. You're literally sitting in this car behind or right in front of the fuel tank. Like, these are the seats, fuel tank. I think that's actually the tank right there. So that's why the inlet, you know, your fill tube is right out back here on that deck, because it fills directly in to this tank. So it's pretty tight in here. All right, let me see what I got to do next. All right, next up, FM says we got to take out the actual connectors from the fuel pump, so I'm going to do that. The connectors are right here, and helpfully with the big fuel kit, they give you this Lyle Disconnect Kit or his tool. And what this does is you slip this over, if I don't lose it down inside the car, you slip this over the fuel line, and it looks like that. And then this kind of pushes, if I can align it right, these fuel connections have like little tabs. So there's a tab right here and another one on the opposite side. So what you want to do is you want to make this tool push in so that these plastic pieces push these tabs outward, and that'll allow this connector to come off. So let me set this really quick up and see if you guys can watch me try to get this off. Right, not the best angle, but I'll give it a shot. And that's it. Okay. I'm going to disconnect this. It definitely smells like gas. Recording this super precariously with a selfie stick. Okay, so got that out of there. This adapter works amazing, that disconnect tool. Next up, I just gotta pull off all of these Phillips screws. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Phillips screws. So I'm just gonna take these out, set them aside. No junk here. Whoops. I'm gonna try to push these fuel lines off to the side. Just up, which they're not, ow. They're not really having that. Alright, whatever. Just tuck this down. Alright. Okay. There we are. Alright. Show way you can see that is a sender. And of course this thing had basically a full tank of fuel, so everything is covered in fuel. There's a little sock at the bottom there that's currently dripping off fuel. I am going to see if I can let that drain for just a second or two. Just to get all the gas out of that. A couple squeezes, that'll do it. Alright, I'm going to kind of wrap this up and carry this out of here without dripping gas all over everything on the car. Alright, we got the fuel pump out. This is the whole assembly. This is the sender unit, so this is what determines the level of fuel in the tank and sends it out of the connector here. The other side of the connector goes down to the fuel pump and turns this on and off. So that's why there is a 4-position connector here. There's 2 for the sender and 2 for the fuel pump. And it's peeing out fuel, so good. Alright, reading these instructions, it looks like we gotta take off the fuel pump via this bracket here. So there's a small bracket with a Phillips on it. And apparently this just kind of comes off like so. Oh, yep, okay, there's the bracket. Let me grab the new pump really quick. There it is, DW300. So looking at this, it's pretty similar. It looks like it plugs right in. Now, this actually comes with a new everything. I might need to read these instructions as well. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. Comes to have instructions here. Whoops, some new wiring, because I guess this uses a different connector than the Mazda setup. So from what I was reading, I'm going to need to splice in to these wires here. That give you a new, filter. So this is like this filter right here. It goes onto the bottom of the pump. You get a new rubber bottom plate. So this is, I guess, the bit that goes onto the bottom here to space that out, looks like. And you get 2 hose clamps. And they give you a length of tubing, which looks like they just cut it oversized to let you cut it down to size so that it'll fit. This should come out. Everything inside here has gotten really dry. The fuel has really just dried out the insides of this assembly. There we go. Oh wow, there's not even a lip on that to hold this in. Whoops. With gas everywhere. Oh. This looks pretty much the same except for the connector here as opposed to this, and so you can see it. Basically they're identical. It's from the end. As you can see, they're pretty much the same. Alright, so did a bunch of reading about all this and a couple thoughts. The Flying Miata Big Fuel Kit, for attaching the stock wire here to the new connector provides you with a whole bunch of butt splices. So these butt splices are what you're supposed to use to hook this together. I was kind of skeptical of that because it seems a little janky, but from what I've been looking at online, even the OEM replacement stuff that comes from the big companies includes that thing. So as far as I know, it's fine. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, so I did a little bend in the wire right there, which is gonna show me where approximately I need to cut this. Then I'm gonna take the stock setup here, and approximately in the same place. This is plugged into here, somewhere right around there. I'm gonna unravel this. This comes with this this wrap. I'll probably reuse it. So overall, we're going to have something that looks kind of like that. Okay. Cut the factory fuel pump wires. Okay. All right. So go ahead and snip these guys off. Yes. Once again, measure 5 times and cut once. That seems like it should be enough. All right, let's get these butt splices put on. Just gonna go ahead and so that bottoms out at just the right spot. I need my insulation crimpers here, 26 to 14 and 12 to 10. These are 14 to 16, so we'll use that one. Go ahead and crimp opposite the little stop right here. All right, and that is definitely in there. Do the same thing here. Those are really on there. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and measure this one more time before I do anything crazy. Now it tells me to connect the blue wire from the Mazda to the red wire. So the blue wire here is gonna be positive, and it says the black wire is gonna be negative. All right. Those appear to be connected quite well. I lied, I'm actually going to use the blowtorch, but we're just going to put it on very low. Alright, so you can probably not see that, but it is going. So we're going to just kind of gently warm these up and see what happens. Perfect. Alright. Looks good. So there you go. There's the current, there's the connectors. Shrunk, crimped, shrunk, ready to go. There's even actually a little bit of adhesive. That's one of the reasons you have to heat it up so much, is that there's adhesive that flows out around the connections there. And it actually seals these connections up. It's very difficult to see, but there's a tiny bit on these, on the ends there of the adhesive. So this should be good. All right, well, let's put the rest back together. All right, next step is the instructions say that on the 99 to 05s, you need to remove the stock fuel pressure regulator here. Don't need it anymore because we've got a fuel pressure regulator that we're going to be putting in on the output of the tank here. So the instructions say to just pull this pressure regulator off and the hose and just leave this dumping straight into the tank. So I'm going to do that really quick. These look like 10 millimeter. Those are really on there. Sometimes you just need a tiny impact. Let's see if we can pop these off. There we go. Perfect. Okay. And this thing should just kind of pop out of there. There we go. A little O-ring on the end. So this is something we don't need anymore, so I'll set that aside. The instructions say basically just installation is the reverse of disassembly. So we're going to put this all back together. Looking at the old pump, the sock sticks out to the bottom, it's on the away from the output here, so it's going to stick out this way. So just need to put this on here. Oops. There was a little note here. Alright, this way doesn't say anything about the sock. Let's see if I can't muscle this on here, because it seems like it's just not easy to get on. Alright, that looks flush. I'm going to go ahead and put that little clip on. So that little clip should go onto the back of there. Not sure how easy it's going to be to push down onto it. Alright, we've got the pump ready to go with the new sock on it, locked into place. It's got the rubber bumper on the bottom. This is the mount bracket and the screw to hold that on. That holds the pump to the bottom of this fuel pump assembly. And we've got the clamps that will hold the rubber hose that connects from the pump itself into the output line here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clamp this down. Don't want to go too crazy on that because it is a plastic housing. Now over here, do the same thing, clamp this down. All that's left now is to hook up the power line from the pump to the upper connector. So we have the new connector here. Go ahead and hook this up. Okay. And flipping this back over without destroying the sender. I'm going to wrap this line skyward here and rotate him a little bit, and he should plug right into there. Perfect. So we are all set to go with the fuel pump assembly. So now time to put this back into the car. Well, now here's a sight you don't see every day. Actually looking down inside the fuel tank. Very interesting. Trying to drop this guy down inside of here a little bit. You can see there's the fuel, I believe that's the inlet. So there's where it's coming in. And that's where it dumps into the tank. There's all these various little pieces and parts inside of there, like these little interesting areas within the tank. Alright, we got the fuel pump assembly here, and let's see, I think it goes in like this. So I'm going to slowly lower this guy down inside of here, hopefully without breaking everything. Being careful. So this actually is very interesting because it actually goes down quite deep right there. This actually sits at an angle, which I didn't notice before. Alright, so it kind of goes on like so. And that's that. I'll get the screwdriver and put the screws back in. Alright, we've got it in. Now the instructions say not to put the cover back on here because we got to do some more work. I believe these hoses got to be replaced because these are going to a fuel pressure regulator we're going to be putting underneath this tank. And also we're going to be using, as far as I'm aware, we're going to be using some AN fittings. So we'll leave this off for now and we'll see what happens. Alright, here's a rear wheel, one under the car, and we got to pull off this little plastic piece here, which seems to cover the fuel rails running to the back of the car, and we see here the charcoal canister, some more of the emission system stuff. So we're going to pull that off and just see what we find underneath. Alright, we got that panel taken off, and as you can see up here we got the fuel filter right here. There is the feed. This looks like the feed line here going up to the engine. So the fuel comes into the fuel filter, goes through it, comes out the back here, routes around, and then it goes up to the front via the thick line. I think this is the evap line because he is coming out of the canister. the fuel pressure regulator is going to be sitting back where this fuel filter currently is, and we'll be mounting all of that up inside of here, hopefully. Not sure if I can remove this big charcoal canister here yet, but I will do some investigation and see if that's possible. That might give us a little more room to work, because this is a pretty tight area as it is right now. Now this kit comes with a lot of adapters. I've got 3 right here, there's another one, and there's a whole bag full of them. So a whole lot of them. I have to find a couple adapters that we're using, and unfortunately they are not named by number. Thanks, Find Miata. Alright, so it is the next day, and I've got some interesting news. So there's a whole lot of stuff that comes with the Flux fuel kit from Fly Miata. A lot of stuff. There's, I think, something like almost 10 hoses, probably just as many connectors, and a whole bunch of different little peripherals and pieces and parts that come together to really create a good fuel system. Now, sometime around fall of last year, 2017, they made some changes to the system to improve it. They used a different routing pattern for the fuel line coming out of the pump, and they changed the way a few things work to make it a little easier to install, because it's kind of a cramped space in there. So the issue is that the instructions didn't really get updated. So the instructions kind of look like this. Here's a image of what the instructions I received show, and you can see it's got this kind of setup here. Unfortunately, I don't have the stuff to do that. For example, the fuel filter that I've got looks like this, which is a lot larger than the one that is shown, so it can't just screw it into the fuel pressure regulator. So I called them up, and helpful as always, they figured out what it was that actually needed to be done. They sent me out an improved picture that shows how this is supposed to go together, and I'm going to go ahead and try to mock that up on the bench right now. That should kind of give me a little bit better idea of if I've got all the parts and if everything's going to fit. Alright, so the big thing that's kind of thrown me for a loop here that they changed is that they went from, on this design, all the fuel flows through the fuel regulator into the output, and then the pressure, the return here from the fuel pressure regulator goes through the flux fuel sensor and back to the tank. Alright, so the difference here on the new one is that all of the fuel coming from the pump flows directly through the filter first, then it goes to a T. The one end of the T goes right up to the 84-inch line running up to the engine, and the other end of the T comes up to the inlet on the fuel pressure regulator. The outlet of the fuel pressure regulator goes to the flux fuel sensor and then goes back up to the tank's return. The difference is that the fuel pressure regulator is basically moved off to a side circuit, so it's not in line. You have a straighter flowing path for the fuel to flow up to the engine, and then this side circuit will bleed pressure off of that main circuit to maintain the correct fuel pressure. This works fine because the fuel pressure regulator is essentially see-through. Now, it's kind of hard to see through it, but the inside of this is basically hollow. So these 3 holes along here are all connected in this internal chamber. The bottom one here, top, bottom, however you have it oriented, this guy is the relief. So as the pressure builds up to the specified pressure via this little adjuster here, this will begin to bleed off pressure back into the tank. So this has to be hooked up to the return. It's also generally where you hook on the flex fuel sensor, and that way this is constantly sensing the amount of fuel coming through the regulator, so it knows the ethanol content, and at the same time this is not in the path of the fuel, so this has no restrictions on the system at all. Alright, so let's see if we can get this thing mocked up. Alright, so this is the fuel system I've tried to recreate according to the picture provided to me by Flying Miata. So I'll take you through the path of the system from fuel inlet to fuel outlet. Starting with the inlet, we've got the 24-inch length hose. This is the straight and 90 degree, and this is number 27-34122. I'm reading you the numbers because the numbers are not specified in the instructions or in the picture, and that was a little difficult for me to figure out what goes where. This comes into the fuel filter. This is the Datchworks FF70 fuel filter. This is larger than specified in the original instructions. Apply for better flow. It also has a replaceable element that you can pop out of there. This attaches into the fuel filter. The fuel filter itself comes with two adapters, and that is to adapt AN6 to the 3/4/16 male ORB inside, and that is with number 27-14470. Should be two of those. Coming out of the fuel filter, we've got a straight through T. Now this is a 6AN female to 6AN male, 6AN male. So what this is going to do is the fuel is going to flow straight through this, and the end of here attaches to the 84-inch line that goes up to the engine. This output here, the second T, goes up to the inlet of the fuel pressure regulator. This is the 8-inch 0 and 45 degree. That is 27-34041. Into the fuel pressure regulator, we go through a 90 degree AN6 to 9/16 18 adapter, and that's number 27-14442. There's two of those on here. Inside the regulator, this entire internal body is the same, so we've got a plug on this side, and that plug is going to be 04-46945. I don't have the bag because it doesn't have the number on it, but this plugs off the far side of the fuel pressure regulator since we're not using it. The outlet of the fuel pressure regulators is the return to the tank. So this is, if the pressure gets too high in here, once it reaches the preset, it begins to allow pressure to relieve through this line. So we got that 90 degree coupling here. This is now the 12-inch line. So this is the straight and 45 degree, and that's 27-34061. This enters into the Flux fuel sensor on its way back to the tank. The Flux fuel sensor uses the push lock fittings, so there are adapters. These are 6AN to 3/8 female push lock adapters, and that is number 27-14155. There's two of those, obviously. And on the far side here, this connects to the 36-inch 90 degree and straight braided line. That is number 27-34182. So I think I've covered the whole system here. The 84-inch line hooks onto here. The feed line here goes up to the tank, as does the return line. These two lines are going to go to the feed and return on the tank with adapters as well. Those are using these 27-14145. Those are the 6AN to 5/16 push lock, and those will attach onto the tank. The only other thing that goes into this is going to be the gauge, which is pretty obvious where that goes, but that will thread into the body of the fuel pressure regulator right here. So that will just thread in like that. Now I've just lightly assembled all this. None of this is tightened down, just barely assembled. All of this will have to be oiled, correctly tightened down. So this is just kind of mock-up to see if I've got all the parts and if they all fit together. Now there's one more thing that they mention, that mounting this to the frame rail as in the picture, this will cause the hoses to get kind of close to the frame rail and they could abrade against it. In the case that that happens, they provide a set of spacers here, and these spacers can be put behind the body of this flex fuel sensor to space it away from the frame rail. And those are number 09-59965. There's two of them. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and just put some of this stuff together while I've got it on the bench here. This is stuff that is going to fit the same no matter what, so no big deal. Basically, these fittings are for going between these push-on connectors and the AM style fittings. And it's got a little oil on it already. Basically, this goes on this side, this slides on. It's got a pair of 2 O-rings inside. It's really difficult to see, but there's 2 O-rings inside there, and both of those will seal on this tube here. So we are going to have to lube the tube up a little bit. So I have the oil out. Alright, gonna throw together the Datchworks fuel filter here. Got this thing all apart, ready to go. Alright, so first thing says that O-ring needs to go inside of the outflow, so it's going to need to go inside of here. In order to do that, we've got to use this lube that they provide. I guess this just tears open. I don't have to cut it. They say to add like 4 dabs here. So just to do like that, and like that, that, and one there. Yeah, a little extra on this one here. All right, even these boys up. All right. Okay, so. That's essentially how it's supposed to sit. And then basically it says just kind of assemble it. So the way this works is you've got a neodymium magnet right here. This will catch any metallic particles, well, ferrous metallic particles coming out of the fuel tank. There's a stainless steel screen. The fuel flows through the screen, and then it comes out of the inside here, and this goes into that outlet. So the O-ring here is going to seal against this face, like so. And then the spring here sits inside there, and this pushes against the back to hold this against that O-ring so that nothing slips by. Now it says to torque these to 15 to 20 foot-pounds. It just says 15 to 20 pounds. Alright, 15 to 20 inch-pounds is really light. 15 to 20 foot-pounds is pretty darn heavy. So I'm not really sure how this is supposed to be sealed. How tight is it supposed to be clamped. I'm just going to go as tight as I feel like I can on this. It just says do not over tighten, so I'll err on the side of caution. I'm just going to use a big wrench here and just kind of snug that up. They've got O-rings in them. The ends have O-rings, so once they bottom out, that's pretty much it. Like, yeah, they don't want to turn much more. I'm just going to bottom them, both of them out. Okay, these O-rings that came with the filter, I believe are for attaching whatever you're going to attach to the ends of this. But the adapters that came with this are also from Datchworks, and they already have O-rings on them, so I'm just going to kind of roll with that. Once again, I don't know what torque value these are supposed to go on here to, because they just kind of thread in. There is an O-ring though, and they seem to thread in pretty smoothly. So I'm going to go ahead and just thread them in, and I will snug them up. Alright, so there you go. She's ready to rock. I'm over here at the vise. I'm getting ready to clamp on these ends. This is just kind of set onto here. This isn't actually clamped. I'm just basically getting ready to do this. I have to put Teflon on these threads first. Now for doing the Teflon, it's going to go in a clockwise direction, so as you put it on there, it's not going to unravel. you want to go to a maximum of 1.5 wraps. So that was 1.5 to 2 turns. All right, crush washer on. All right, so I've got my torque wrench here set to 19 foot-pounds, which is about what I've read is the correct value. And I've got the crowfoot end on here. It's actually a flare crowfoot. Technically not the right size. This is a different size, but should be able to maybe get this on here. I did not anticipate that bit. All right, so I've got my wrench here. It's basically just my torque wrench set to 19 foot-pounds with a crowfoot on the end of there. So I should be able to slip this over that, down onto here. Oops, my vise isn't bolted down. That is pretty tight. I worry about going any tighter with that. Yeah, that's pretty in there. Yeah, I don't feel like going any tighter. You know, if it starts leaking or something, I'll snug it up some more, but that is pretty tight. I think that's gonna do. Alright, last thing to do is to get the gauge installed, and it kind of is snugging up right there. Got a wrench here to tighten this down. Not really sure if that's snug enough. It seems pretty tight in there. I don't want to over tighten it because, you know, it is NPT, so don't really want to go crazy with it. And it's into what I believe is aluminum. Yeah, that's pretty snug. I think I'm just going to leave it there. It doesn't really matter orientation. You can still read it, so more important that it's not coming out and that it is also not leaking. So, all right, looks good. Let's start working on the car part. Hey everyone, I'm going to cut this video right here just because we've got the fuel system done getting mocked up. We're going to put it in the car. So I've got another probably a couple hours of video of installing it, and I've got to cut up. So I'm going to leave this one here for now. I appreciate you guys sticking with me through all this. You know, make sure you let me know if there's something that you like that I'm doing, something that you don't like, something I'm doing wrong, even just, you know, suggestions or just saying, hey, that sounds awesome. But I should hopefully have the rest of the fuel system video edited and up in the next couple of days. I'm doing a lot of work on the engine right now, so that's kind of taking most of my time. But I appreciate you all watching, and I'll see you on the next video.